Tyrannosaurus Drip by Julian Donaldson and David Roberts. In a swamp beside a river, where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water's edge. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water reeds. Now across the rushy river on the hill the other side lived the Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted up with hunting, and they shouted up with war, and they shouted up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaurs. But the two Tyrannosaurus, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered down with water, and they muttered down with wet. And then muttered, what a shame that bridges aren't invented yet. Now a little Commosaurus, but for short we call him Comp, found a duck-billed egg and stole it from the nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it, and she ran with it, and murmured, clever me! And won't the baby chomps be thrilled with duck-billed egg for tea? She dropped the egg in terror and went running for her life, for the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife, and the duck-billed egg went rolling, and at last it came to rest in all of unlikely places, the Tyrannosaurus nest. Now the mother T had great big jaws and great enormous legs, but her brain was rather little, and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, hatch out my terrors, with your scaly little tails, and your spiky little toothies, and your rather scaly nails. Out hatched babies 1 and 2, as perfect as could be, but Mother T was horrified by baby number 3, and she grumbled, he looks weedy, and she grumbled, he looks weak, and she grumbled, what long arms, and look, his mouth is like a beak. He would just needs feeding up, said Dad, and gives the babies some meat. First 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, I'm really sorry. And he said, I simply can't. And he said, this meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant. A plant, yelled Mum in horror, and Dad said, get a grip. His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. And they shouted, up with hunting, and they shouted, up with war, and they shouted, up with the bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaurs. But poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, you silly Drip, you got the words all wrong. For he hooted down with hunting, and he hooted up down with war, and he hooted down with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaurs. Drip's sisters soon grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum, but they turned on Drip and told him, you're not fierce enough to come. And he cried, they've gone without me, and he cruckled, Accoday. And he cried, this doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away. So he ran off to the river, where he saw a lovely sight, a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs all hooting with delight. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. As he stood there on the bank, a sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duck-bills came to greet him by the rushing river's edge, and they hooted, nice to see you, and they hooted, have some veg. and Drip was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of water weeds and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river and he asked them, who is that creature in the water? And they laughed and said, it's you. That night the lightning crackled and the storm blew down a tree and it fell across the river and the teas cried out, yippee! And they shouted, up with hunting, and they shouted, up with war, and they shouted, up with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaurs. Drip's sister stepped onto the bridge, but then began to frown. For there in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, look out, look down. And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yell. And one cried, water monsters! And the other one cried, help! The mother scolded, nonsense, and she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, goodness gracious me! The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, get a grip. All of you are as drippy as the Tyrannosaurus Drip. He strode onto the bridge and scoffed, I bet there's nothing there. Then he looked into the water, and he jumped into the air. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash. The tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosaurs went splash. And spluttering and clinging to the branches of the tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall, and all the way to sea. And the duckbills hooted happily. They hooted, hip hip, hooray for heroic one and only Duckbill Drip.